I don't know about you, but the PlayStation 5, having been out for 3 years already, is shocking to me. Now, it might be shocking for a lot of people, and it might even be the first year a lot of people have a PlayStation 5, because up until 2023, you couldn't find one of these things very easily. You had to actually put in the work to find it, to the point where people made careers out of it, like Jake Randall, in helping people find the PlayStation 5 in stock anywhere online. Forget about finding it in stores. This thing was impossible to find in stores, but now we're seeing it a lot more readily available, and I've actually seen PlayStation 5s in stores, and it's much easier to get one. So now that it's relatively easy to get a PlayStation 5, after 3 years, is the system worth it? What have we seen from PlayStation? What innovations, what exclusives, what games are drawing people in to sell this thing out constantly? What made it sell out for close to 3 years? Let's take a look at it and really figure out what's been going on and if it's still worth getting a PlayStation 5 after 3 years. Now, something I always want to bring up with the PlayStation 5 is that controller. If you're looking to get a better controller, you're going from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5. PlayStation 4 controller is great, but the PlayStation 5 controller just feels incredible. Just the way they shaped it, everything about it is just a massive upgrade over their previous two controllers. And I don't think this is exactly a system seller. This isn't the main reason to get a PlayStation 5, but it is definitely one of the reasons to get one, especially when games are actually taking advantage of every part of this controller. For instance, it has better rumble where you actually feel it throughout the controller, kind of like the Xbox controller was doing, where you could feel all the different motors throughout. It really immerses you into the gaming, as well as the sticks that actually adapt with whatever game you're playing. For instance, you're playing Call of Duty Black Ops or something like that, you feel the trigger brake on the gun, which, if you don't know what that is, there's a little bit of slack in the trigger. It hits a wall. You feel that friction, and then you feel that trigger brake, and it's insane. No other controller has ever felt like that before, and I'm hoping more games take advantage of that feature because it is great. Even in Spider-Man, when you're swinging around in the city, you feel that kind of trigger brake resistance of, shooting those webs around with his gadgets, and you feel
like Spider-Man.
Like you're more immersed in the game, and that's just great. More immersion is always better, and that controller really does it. Another thing that the PlayStation 5 did was lower the loading times, and loading times are something that just drag you out of the game because you're not in the game anymore. You are simply staring at a screen with a little spinning circle usually in the bottom, or a bar that's filling up, and you're wasting time doing nothing. You're looking to check your phone, you're looking to do literally anything else. That drags you out of that experience. PlayStation 5 has much faster loading times than the PlayStation 4, and it's usually a lot quieter too. Sometimes you'll hear it rev up like a jet engine, but normally throughout the gameplay experience, once it's done that initial loading, it's done, it's quiet. And I'm sure the Slim is even quieter, which is another thing that PlayStation did. They've come out with a PlayStation 5 Slim in the past 3 years, just this year actually. Now, it's not something that you need to go out and get if you have a PlayStation 5 already. It is just a nice thing to have for people that are now getting a PlayStation 5 for the first time, especially if they're getting a digital-only edition to start with. Now, I personally don't know why you would get a digital-only edition, especially when the PlayStation 5 has a wonderful amount of games it can play due to backwards compatibility and how many cheap games you can get for the PlayStation 4 physically used, just finding them everywhere. But let's say you do get a digital edition to start with, well, now you can slap a disc drive on there. So that's great innovation coming from PlayStation, and I would love to see Microsoft do the exact same thing with the Xbox Series S. One of the main things that you really want to look at when you're looking at a console or a gaming system is, what are the exclusives? What is something that I can only play? Only! I want to specifically mention that. What is the only thing that can play these games? What does that selling point look like? And unfortunately, with this console generation, Sony has really dragged their feet when it comes to bringing people over from the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5. Now, I think they did this because there was that long stretch of time where it was sold out and people couldn't just go out and buy a PlayStation 5 if they wanted one. Well, now they can, so it's going to be interesting to see if more games are only for the PlayStation 5 instead of for both, which is what we've really seen so far for the system. And in fact, let's just do a quick rundown of the console exclusives for the PlayStation 5. So in 2020, when the system actually launched, there was Dark Souls, Sackboy Big Adventure, but that doesn't really count because it's the PS4 and PC now. Astro's Playroom, which is a pack-in game, phenomenal game. If you haven't played that game already, I say this in every PlayStation video, you're doing yourself a disservice. Go download that game right now, play it. You'll beat it in a couple hours, but it's a ton of fun. Godfall, terrible ratings and a timed exclusive anyway. Games launched in 2021, Ratchet and Clank, A Rift Apart, but that's also on PC now, so it's no longer a console exclusive. Returnal, fantastic game from what I've seen, but it's also on the PC, so no longer a PlayStation 5 exclusive. Destruction All-Stars, that's a console exclusive, but that game is dead. 2022, Horizon Forbidden West, also on PlayStation 4. Gran Turismo 7, also on PlayStation 4. God of War Ragnarok, also on PlayStation 4. And The Last of Us Part 1, which is just a remake of a game that was on the PS3 and PS4. Spider-Man 2, that is currently a console exclusive and not on the PlayStation 4. So one of their first console exclusives in a long time. And there were also 2 VR games that were console exclusives, and that is Horizon Call of the Mountain and the Dark Pictures Switchback VR. And those are 2 VR games, so you have to have a VR headset to even play those 2 games. Now, I've got all these game titles all over my face, and it looks like I'm being buried by games, but however, if you remove all the ones that are not only on PlayStation 5, it looks a lot worse. This is the console exclusive range that we're looking at right now here in 2023. At the end of 2023, this is it. Now, there are some coming out in the future, 2024, but they're not out yet. So if you're looking at 3 years in, this is it. Now, that's not to say that the console is bad by any stretch of the imagination. That's not saying it's not worth getting just because it doesn't have a whole ton of exclusives. If you have a PlayStation 4 and you're going to a PlayStation 5, now you have all those games you can play. A lot of those PlayStation 4 games got upgrades, so when you get a PlayStation 5, you're seeing better frame rates, sometimes you're seeing better resolution. I know Ghost of Tsushima got upgrades, the original Spider-Man had a remaster that you unfortunately have to buy separately, which is kind of dumb, but there are lots of different games that you can buy upgrades for or just are upgraded by owning a PlayStation 5. So if you really want to count some of those games in, it starts looking a lot better. And if you can't afford a PC that can run the games that are in PlayStation 5 and PC, then there you go. There's some more games for you. But that being said, it feels like the companies that are working with Sony are really holding back. And it feels like Sony has been holding back because they don't want to exclude the PlayStation 4 because of how many people own one. I mean, look at this number right here. This is how many people own a PlayStation 4. So it's really not surprising that they didn't want to immediately jump from the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5, especially since when it first came out, it was hit with a bunch of production issues because of COVID and the supply chain and things like that. So it makes sense why they didn't want to immediately start doing only PlayStation 5 games, but I would argue that by doing that, they probably aren't putting as much effort into the graphics, frame rate, and things like that because they're trying to hold everything back to also still work on the PlayStation 4. And real quick, before moving on to some other new innovations that PlayStation has come out in the past 3 years for the PlayStation 5, I do want to say that, yeah, they have very few exclusives, but the PlayStation exclusives that they do have are of very high quality. If you want to include the ones that are also on PC, these are games that are heavy hitters, especially Spider-Man. I mean, I know a lot of people that want a PlayStation 5 just to play Spider-Man, or they're borrowing someone's PlayStation 5 and buying Spider-Man just to play it. And that's amazing. There's not a lot of games out there that I can say that pull that kind of attention. Now, they did come out with the PSVR 2 here in 2023, and that has limited appeal, I would argue, because VR is still a bit niche, but it is cool to see that PlayStation is still trying to do new things. I know back in the PlayStation 3, and I think some of the PlayStation 4, they copied the Wii completely by having those Move controllers with the glowing balls at the end. And, you know, they also had VR on the PlayStation 4 as well, but it's just cool to see them continue to try new things with tech and not just, here's the console and that's it. It's nice to see other things that they're trying to create and do something different with than just the console. And that's what they're doing, and that's great. They also came out with their own version of Game Pass with different tiers of PlayStation Plus. Now, I don't personally have that. I haven't used it, but I've heard great things from people that do. The only problem is when you compare Game Pass and the PlayStation version is that Microsoft owns a ton of different companies now. So whenever those games come out for those companies, they're coming out day one on Game Pass, which is a huge selling feature of Game Pass. PlayStation Plus, on the other hand, they don't normally have those games, even in-house games, come out day one on their PlayStation Plus version of Game Pass, which is kind of a miss in my opinion, because that's the whole draw of Game Pass besides the massive library of games. However, PlayStation Plus does have their own draw with classic games like PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, and the like. So, over the past 3 years, how has my personal experience been with the system? It's actually the system I play the least, believe it or not. And that has nothing to do with how powerful it is or the games really on it, and has everything to do with Xbox just having Game Pass, and also saves going between the games that I'm playing on my PC and my Xbox. So when I'm playing Forza Horizon on my PC and then I move over to my Series X in my bedroom, I have save parity, and that's amazing. If Sony for some reason starts doing games like that on the PC and the PlayStation, and it's included in the PlayStation Plus, maybe I'll look into getting their version of Game Pass. Maybe I'll start playing their games on PC. But until that parity starts happening, because I'm a PC gamer, I'm getting a lot more out of my Xbox than I was my PlayStation. However, I do love the exclusives on the PlayStation a lot more than the Xbox, because Xbox doesn't really have any. If I only wanted to play PC, I could just play everything and be fine. There's literally no reason to own a Series X unless you're somebody like me who wants to have it in 2 different locations, or somebody that doesn't want to pay for a PC but likes the Microsoft game library and is looking forward to the things they're putting out with their newly bought companies. But if you're just a console player, and especially if you're a PlayStation 4 player, it makes a ton of sense to go from the PlayStation 4 straight to the PlayStation 5, because you're getting all of those upgrades and you get that backwards compatibility. So is it worth buying a PlayStation 5 3 years later? Well, again, that really depends on what type of person you are. If you don't care about graphical fidelity, frame rate, anything like that, you just want to play the game and you don't care, there really aren't that many games that are only on the PlayStation 5, except for like Spider-Man 2, and I keep saying Dark Souls, Demon's Souls, for the love of God. It's on my list. I don't know why I wrote it down wrong. Unless you really care about a couple of games that are only on the PlayStation 5, your PlayStation 4 is going to continue to serve you just fine. Now, the loading screens are going to be a lot longer. It's going to take a lot. But again, this is looking at the perspective of a person that only cares about just playing the game. Can I play the game? PlayStation 4 is going to be more than enough. You're fine. You can hold on until Sony starts making games only for the PlayStation 5. But what we're seeing is that is already starting to happen with Spider-Man 2. So we're already starting to see PlayStation 5 only games, which means that if you want to get in now, it makes sense. It's more readily available. You don't have to fight people online to get it. You don't have to sit there and refresh a page a bunch of times. Now it's easier than ever to get a PlayStation 5, especially while they're packing in games, even if it's Modern Warfare. You know, like you at least have something to play, I guess. But there are plenty of pack-in games. I think God of War Ragnarok also has a pack-in. So if you're looking to get the system and a game, Black Friday or just any of these game bundles is the perfect opportunity to get into PlayStation 5. You're also going to see controllers on sale during Black Friday, normally for like $20 to $30 off. So if we see that again, now's the time to jump in, especially if you're a PlayStation 4 player and you do want to keep gaming. You do want to continue having a Sony system, and you want all of those game upgrades for games you already own, and you want that backwards compatibility. So there you go. It is actually worth getting a PlayStation 5 if you do want, you want to keep up with everything. You want to start playing those PlayStation 5 only games that we're going to see a lot more of in 2024. And also, if you want the latest and greatest tech to play your games in the best way possible. Let me know what you guys think of the PlayStation 5 down in the comments below. If you have one already, if you like it, or if you're thinking of getting one and this video is the thing that finally went, okay, now's the time to do it. PlayStation 4 is getting phased out. I gotta jump into PlayStation 5. Thanks for watching, everybody. Of course, like the video if you guys liked it, subscribe for more content, and as always, have a fantastic day. See you, everybody.